File transfer complete.
This is Arizona Route 66, the podcast. Stories about the people, places, and events found along the main street of America in the Grand Canyon State. For more information on our podcasts, visit ArizonaPodcast.com. Here are your hosts, Chris and Mary.
And good morning. It is Saturday in Mojave Valley, Arizona, and this is the maiden voyage of a brand new venture of Arizona Podcast. We've simply entitled it Arizona Route 66, the podcast. We also have added a new calendar to our website. That's what we're going to talk about this morning. We're so glad that you've tuned in to join us. We're also going to talk about all the fun things that are coming our way. We're going to talk about traveling Route 66 and what it has to offer for everybody that's being a part of it. This morning, if I push all the right buttons and I say hello, I can say hi to this beautiful woman. This is my bride, Mary, who has been hiding from pretty much the world, but has always been a big part of Arizona. Hi, honey. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I have my cup of coffee. I have you, and I have Route 66, so we can talk about everything that's happening. So for those of you that are not quite sure what this is all about, Arizona Podcast began about 3 years ago. And what we decided to do then was talk about everything Arizona. And what I found kind of interesting about everything Arizona was trying to figure out what was happening everywhere. I wanted to talk to the mayors. I wanted to talk to the business owners. I wanted to talk to the nonprofits. Everything that has to do with Arizona, I wanted to be a part of. Over the last 3 years, it's been kind of a struggle, sort of say, but I always ended up coming back to Route 66. It's my passion. It's something that I've been in love with since the summer of 1969. And if you've listened to any of the podcasts, you've heard me say it, and I'll say it again. From the very back seat of a 1964 Chevy Bel Air station wagon, I experienced the United States via Route 66. The only stretch that I have not traveled and is on my bucket list is that of all of Illinois. I'd like to make it to the beginning in Chicago and make it down to the border. That's the only thing left that I haven't experienced. But Arizona, as a 9-year-old kid, was fascinating. It was a lot like Disneyland when you think about it. When we crossed the border, we stopped at Chief Yellow Horse, which is still there, a great little trading post as you make your way into Arizona. We made it to the Petrified Forest. We made it to the Painted Desert. We made it to Meteor City, the Meteor Crater, Williams, the Grand Canyon. We did all the things tourists are supposed to do when they travel Route 66. So with that passion, I've decided to focus the show just on Route 66 in Arizona. So what we're going to do is focus again on the businesses, the local people that make this traveling Route 66 so much fun. We're going to talk to not only the not-for-profits, we're going to talk to the business and community leaders. We'll talk to the mayors again, good friends with Bertie Cano in Winslow. We'll talk to the mayor of Williams. We'll even share some time in Kingman as well. Make our way to Oatman. The mayor of Oatman is a donkey. And Walter the Wonder Donkey is somebody I've planned to interview. Again, I have a lot of questions. Don't know if I'm going to get all the answers. So what else have we done to make this all come together? Well, I'm going to touch off briefly that we've jumped into the new age. And maybe if you caught Jim Hinckley's show last weekend on Jim Hinckley's America, he discussed what his show will be on Sunday, which is AI generated from Google. Now, Notebook is it's scary, and I'm a techie kind of guy. I embrace tech, but believe it or not, they call it a deep dive. So what we allowed Google to do is to just rip apart our website, just deep dive into it, what it is, what it does. Then we introduced them to the calendar, which we announced last night at midnight. And that calendar is available at ArizonaPodcast.com. You'll see a big banner on the right-hand side. It just simply says Arizona Route 66, the calendar. And we also let them know a little bit more about us. So the AI generation jumped in and ripped it apart and put together a script. And following this part of our podcast today, we will play that deep dive. Two people talking about what they found on our websites. Now, this is kind of exciting for us. Now, the calendar's a little bit different. And let me tell you, Mary and I had a lot of trouble finding the information. There was not one kind of a clearinghouse. So if somebody's going to travel Route 66, they'd have to really dig deep themselves to find it. Now, Mary and I both found ourselves, what was it, Mary, when we were kind of digging through the websites, what was it, 70% were like pretty much offline. They just didn't have the information. And the other 30% we were able to figure out what was going on. So that's when we dived in and we decided we will be that clearinghouse. When I, again, spoke to other podcasters, they too, talking about the centennial coming up in 2026, they didn't have a clearinghouse, something to look at and find events that would be going on during the big centennial. So the calendar. That's exactly what it is. We've broken it down into bite-sized little morsels. You can find out some really nice events that are going on by the calendar. You can search it one by one. You can do topics if you want to go to a street fair, a festival, a holiday trend. You can look at other events that are going on. Plus, we've written our own dialogue dealing with the ghost towns of Route 66. We've also talked about the oddities, the things that most people don't know if they want to go see it or not, like going up and seeing goldfish in a natural spring on the Sidewinder Pass on Route 66. And then we did another section, not only talking about ghost towns, but we were talking about walking tours, like Jim's walking tour in Kingman. There's also 5 different walking tours in the city of Flagstaff. So we have become not only that kind of a clearinghouse, we invited the sources of that information. So every city along Route 66, whether it be Seligman, whether it be Kingman, whether it be Flagstaff, Winslow, all the cities that have their own calendar, we've put on our calendar. So everything you need to know is there. Why do you want to come on Route 66 just in the state of Arizona? Well, that's where Mary and I have our fun. She is probably the world's best co-pilot. I love how she'll sit and just kind of point at things and say, what's that? And we'll pull over. So, Mary, if I were to ask you, there's probably just a handful of things that you would want to talk about or see. But when we take our little travels on Route 66, anything favorite pop to mind at all? Why do you want to come on Route 66?
I'm trying to think here. Well, I
She's like my color man. It's a strike and a
I was
ball.
going to get something specific there.
Oh, you can. I mean, you were talking about just a couple of days
go.
ago the Burma shave signs
Yeah.
when we were
Yeah,
out there.
no, those were throwback to your childhood in the 60s where you just can't wait for the next one to come by and
Correct.
figure out what the heck they're saying and what the heck they're selling. And
the poetry that goes along
That
with it.
goes
I think one
along
of my
with it.
favorites, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, was, and I think it's every 10th of a mile the sign shows up. And for those that are not familiar, there were over 7,000 signs in 45 states in the heyday of the Burma shaves of the 1950s. So about every 10th of a mile, you would see a short little snippet of the poem. So I'm going to read them faster than every 10th of a mile. Every shaver now can snore 6 more minutes than before by using Burma Shave. But it would take you a mile to read that out.
so in your mind's eye, you're basically seeing one of those old black and white TV commercials, but it's on the road there. It sort of
Absolutely.
reminds you of sitting in your living room in front of the old black and white.
The TV antenna with a piece of foil on top of it.
Exactly.
It's one of my kind of funny ones. I noticed the other one I'm going to try to, for those that are listening to the podcast, you're not seeing me pushing buttons and going crazy. But I want to talk about this place if I can pop it up, and let's see if we can make that happen. It's kind of interesting on making not only podcast work, but to talk about visuals now that we're doing. And for those that are trying to figure this out, why are we doing this on our YouTube channel? The goal is to visit locations all along Route 66 in Arizona and do them on video on our YouTube channel. And then we'll work a little bit different. We'll record those programs and play them as a podcast on a later date on our Podbean app. We tried to do Podbean Live, just too many technical difficulties for me, and it was just completely crazy. So I've put up a photo of a place that Mary and I stopped at a couple of years ago, the Meteor City Trading Post, which was a lot of fun, and it was, of course, closed. Now, Mary, what's one of our crazy, zany favorite movies?
Oh, that would be Starman.
Starman.
Absolutely.
Jenny, what was her name? It wasn't
Jenny Hayden.
Jenny Hayden, that's right, Starman, and that was Beau Bridges. Or was it Jeff?
I think it was Jeff.
Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, it was Jeff Bridges. Yeah.
So for those that have never seen the movie Starman, it was a quirky movie, and it was just a lot of fun. And I hate to blow the ending of the movie for you, but at least take a chance to go watch it. Starman gets to the Earth and tries to make his way home, and part of that travel is on Route 66. He gets a ride. Here's a little history for you. He gets a ride from the overnight cook from the Ludlow Cafe, and gets all the way to Winslow in the back of a truck with the Earthling that is helping him, and I've forgotten her name. What? It'll pop into my head.
Is it Deborah Winger?
No, but she was in. It's going to pop in. Anyway, we have an Earthling that helps her, and he makes his way. He needs to get to the meteor crater. He stops here, where we're showing this photo online, the Meteor City Trading Post, and has his piece of pie. And it was amazing to him that it would have all these tastes. Anyway, it's a cute place. However, it's been bought and sold a couple of times over the last 20 or 30 years. Recently, Dirk Dole of Meteor City, I checked in with him a couple of weeks ago. They have been rebuilding and getting set for reopening. So I'll quote him here. In his email, he said, "Yes, all is well, Chris. Slowly putting Meteor City, getting it all cleaned up and ready for our reopening." He didn't set the date for us, but we know that it's on its way. And I know Mary and I will make our way out to Meteor City.
And we're going to let folks know when we know, as soon as we know when that's ready to.
Absolutely.
I'd
like to, maybe if at all possible, Mr. Dole will let us do a live show there.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and we'll make our way into that part. And there's so much to see in Winslow, besides the meteor crater and besides the trading post, which would lead me to one of my next photos here. That would be our day in Winslow, Arizona, where Mary became the girl in a flatbed Ford.
Only because you made me.
It was, for those that have not even seen the Standing on the Corner Park in Winslow, they have embraced the Eagles song, Take It Easy. Let's see if I remember the lyrics. There's a girl, my lord, in a flatbed Ford, slowing down to take a look at me. There you go. And Mary even sang it. I can't carry a note in a wheelbarrow. But nonetheless, you have to go by and see the Standing on the Corner Park. And every year they have a festival and an anniversary. And I believe that song is coming up on 50 years. So, I mean, there's some big changes going on. Also, there's a couple of walking tours in the city of Winslow that you can get out of your car, stretch your legs, and you can walk their walking trail that will lead you from the Standing on the Corner Park through some beautiful historic buildings of the city of Winslow, and including the La Posada Hotel. If you have not seen that, something to keep in mind, it has a rich history. And part of it was one of the original Harvey houses. So that's something, too. Now,
seems to me that there were several little curio shops and lots of nice things just down that little main street there that you can pop into. And
diners,
a couple of
too.
Cafes, little
coffee shops.
Diners. And it's just a cute, quaint little town.
And what's interesting, you bring that up, is that I try to get people, and what we've always tried to do on Arizona Podcast, is to get you to get off Interstate 40 and to get on Route 66. There are things that unless you take that exit and you go into these quaint little towns, spend the extra hour, go in and have a cup of coffee at the local standing on the corner park coffee shop. Go stand next to the statue of Glenn Fry, and then make your way and see the history. And like you said, the quaint little shops, which leads us as to another part of what we're doing. We invite you to support the local businesses on Route 66. Now, we know that the big centennial's coming up in 2026, but we're talking about tomorrow. We're talking about next week. We're talking about next year. Go visit these shops, and you will find, at least what I found, and I know, Mary, you've done the same thing, is the people and how welcoming they are. When you walk into a shop, they're just so happy to see you, and all you have to do is ask them a question. If there's something that you saw, they know about it, and they're more than happy to share that information with you. So now the other part of town, I have to get Mary off my screen here, which I would never want to say that before, is making our way into the city of Seligman. And Seligman, I mean, you go into what's happening with Angel and how Angel, by knocking on a lot of doors, if you haven't read the history, there are a million websites that will, Delgadillo will share with you, not only the snow-capped diner that you can go and see, you can visit his barbershop and his wife as well, in their gift shop that they have. But what makes him famous is he got very tired of no traffic into the city of Seligman. When Interstate 40 took over Route 66, towns died. I mean, the stretch in California from Amboy to Ludlow, there are 5 towns there that are gone. So, like Baghdad, the only reference to a ghost town is a tree with a plaque. Angel wasn't going to do that. Angel said, nope, I'm going to make sure that the state remembers that we're here, and if not only the state, the entire route. So Angel, in all his hard work and with all the residents of the community of Seligman, were able to make, believe it or not, Seligman is the home of the birthplace of historic Route 66. So they take that claim to fame.
Now, refresh my memory. That's where we when we went through, we had some tour buses, a whole bunch of heavily trafficked at this stage of the game.
Yeah,
lots and lots of folks that are just out. A lot of Asian community. It's just in love with Route 66, and it seemed to me that was one of the meccas.
Yeah. And not only here in Arizona, but you and I were in California doing one of our Mother Road Minutes. And we were at
that was the Baghdad Cafe.
Cafe. Good for you. Mm-hmm. Good memory there, sister. We had a lot of fun. And what was so interesting, it was actually closed. It was closed. It wasn't doing anything. And what I found kind of interesting about that was she came out, she saw us filming, and she invited us in, and we thought that was great. And about 2 or 3 cars showed up, but there was 4 or 5 from, I believe they were from Japan, yeah. Correct. Mm-hmm. And they bought like 20 T-shirts, and it kind of cleared off her rack of merchandise. There is a whole lot of people from around the world. There's a couple of social media sites that I visit, and I look at them. And what I find so interesting about that is that they're like in Germany and other parts of Europe, Asia,
Sweden.
It's just completely crazy of what happens. But
I agree. The running theme is that most of the shopkeepers and the folks that and even like the mayors of the town, they will just absolutely welcome you with open arms. They've got stories to tell. They've got books for you quite often. And I remember that at Roy's. And, they've got history books, and they've got, just backstories and legends and tales and all sorts of things to share with visitors. All you got to do is come in and let them know that you're a tourist and you're excited to learn something about their place.
So, and speaking of, and not only Arizona, which is where we bounce around the most, but we make our way west about as far as Barstow. We make it into the small communities along there where we find the Baghdad Cafe, the Ludlow Cafe. But if I remember right, wasn't there was a time that we were at Roy's in Amboy, and you were looking at something on their old cafe, the sit down. What's that called?
It's a bar.
A
Yeah,
bar.
It's a yeah.
A cafe.
Yeah,
like old Woolworths.
belly up to the bar.
Yeah.
That kind of place.
And again, they had books, and I believe Ken went out of his way. Ken Large, who is the head guy at the Roy's in Amboy, he literally handed you a book and said,
"Hey, let me take it home." I said, "I promise." And he said, "This is like one of two of the last editions I have here. But here, go ahead, take it with you." And so, of course, I was very careful to make sure it got back in his hands unharmed, but very just full of all sorts of folklore and history with regard to not just Amboy, but the Route 66 all down the line.
Yeah, and I think if you don't mind, is that I think what we need to do is not only talk about that, but I do have another picture here. Let me bring it up. Let's see. Push the right button, and there we go. Jackass Junction see, now we're journeying to Oatman, and Oatman. The history of Oatman. If people, I know now. Let me change the camera here. Oh, I can't. I have the picture up. She's doing exactly what I have fun at. She rolls her eyes. I love the city of Oatman, and she does as well.
Oatman reminds me of just a little tiny version of Knott's Berry Farm. It has kind of that all
does.
the little rustic shops and you can walk into one of the little gold mine attractions,
yeah.
one of the mines there, and of course there's all those donkeys.
And the donkeys and people. Now I know it sounds crazy, but Walter, the Wonder Donkey, who actually has books. You can go into a library and find the books. You can find them in bookstores everywhere. Walter the Wonder Donkey is the honorary mayor of Oatman. So you can literally say ass. You have a mayor that's an ass. And he is, I have yet to meet him. And I keep trying to do that. Now, again, I get a lot of eye rolls. So we have friends that will come in from out of state. And the first thing I want to do is let me take you to Oatman. And you can hear Mary's eyes roll when I bring that up. But I mean, I got the sign up of Jackass Junction and Leanne and her handmade soaps that are in the gift store. Postcards and all the trinkets that you would want to find on Route 66. And Jackass Junction is just one of many that are on this street. Like you said, it kind of reminds you of a day at Knott's Berry Farm of the Old West.
Lots of little gift shops, and there's lots of kitsch and trivia and stuff to look at and to pick up. And if you got kids, you go in, you buy yourself a little ice cream cone and just do the old time, day out.
We went out and had just Mary and I with no kids or no visitors to town, and one of the donkeys walked into the Oatman Hotel. There's a little ice cream store right when you walk in the lobby, and ate my ice cream. Literally popped its head over my shoulder and ate my ice cream. And when I was talking to Leanne of Oatman, she knew the name of the donkey. She knew exactly which donkey it was. So that was kind of interesting.
The cheeky one.
Yeah, the one that likes ice cream. And then Mary allows me to go out every once in a while, and I love to have lunch at the restaurant inside the Oatman Hotel. And inside that restaurant, and I always seem to have the same thing. I sit down and I order the Roadrunner sandwich with a glass of donkey pea and a side of burro ears. I know that sounds crazy, folks, but that's what's on the menu, and it's probably one of the best sandwiches you'll have. And don't worry, they're not real donkey ears, by the way. Burro ears, They're potato chips, but
skins.
potato skins. So yeah. Across the street from there is Pinnacles, one of our favorite little shops that we can walk into. You can let's see what is you can plant your own cacti in that area, which is kind of interesting. Also, keep in mind, going back to the Oatman Hotel, if you weren't aware, it's haunted. And again, it escapes me the name of the ghost that runs through the city of Oatman. But this is the hotel, originally the Derlin Hotel, before it was the Oatman Hotel. It's where Clark Gable and Carol Lombard shared their honeymoon night. That's the legend. So they got married in Kingman, Arizona, made their way to Oatman, stayed at the Oatman Hotel, and then made their way back to Hollywood. They had a big premiere that day. What's kind of interesting is the Oatman Hotel has preserved that room. So you can literally go to the hotel. They will show you the room. It's on display the way it was when they got married. So there's a whole lot of history that goes there, which now leads me to more of Route 66, is making your way down Sidewinder. And for those that are not familiar with Sidewinder, that is a stretch of Route 66 that you would call white knuckle or an e-ticket ride like Disneyland. This is not for tractor-trailer rigs. RVs can make it. I'm thinking up to 40 feet. Don't quote me. You can check the road maps. They'll let you know. Some pretty crazy hairpin turns, a couple of grades that gets you over Sitgreaves Pass. And then you make your way. If you pull over at mile marker 30, you will find an actual spring, a natural water spring that has goldfish in it, given the name Goldfish Pond. You can go and see this. Now, why is there spring out there? Well, think about it. It's a desert. It's 130 degrees. It's a natural spring that keeps the animals with water. And it's amazing. People will pull over and take a photo of it. There's a staircase that leads up to it, plenty of parking on the side of the road, so that's something else. And that'll take you down into the valley. And in that valley of Oatman, I guess that's also considered Golden Valley as you make your way to Kingman. There's so much to see and do as you make your trip on.
I want to remember you had said something along the lines of back in the old days when we had Tin Lizzies and rickety, the old 20s and 30s cars, that you could literally hire a driver if you were just too frightened to take that road. That's the road we're talking about, yes?
That is the road.
Too frightened to take that road,
Yeah.
you could hire a driver to drive your Tin Lizzie or your Model A up and over that little.
There were people that actually had jobs, and that was their job. I believe it was out of Davis Camp, which is right outside of Cool Springs, and you would pull over white-knuckled, and you hadn't even been on the road for a mile, and they would get in your car and drive you to Oatman. Because they're from Oatman, you just fly across the valley and across the border in the Colorado River. So you're right, that was a big way of doing things. And speaking of Cool Springs, that is on the east side of Sidewinder. I mean, you come off, people would stop at that gas station and fuel up and water up and just take a breath after taking that road. Cool Springs burnt down. It was rebuilt. A gentleman named Ned, we're going to have him on the show soon, and we're going to talk about Cool Springs. For those of you that have no idea what a Cool Springs is, it was a single one-pump gas station and a watering spot to get those people to go up the hill and make sure they had water.
A little oxymoronic for Cool Springs to have burned down.
Yeah. Well, not only once did it burn down, it burned down twice.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, if you watch the movie Universal Soldier with Dolph Lundgren and Jean-Claude Van Damme, the gas station they blow up after they did a little side road going after each other, that's Cool Springs. They actually got permission from the owners to go in and take care of that. They actually blew it up. They built it, blew it up, and it made it into another movie, another exciting thing, again, about Route 66. I'm trying to figure out what the other picture. Oh, I guess this would have to be next. Mr. D's in Kingman, Arizona. Mr. D's is probably, if you're looking for a diner that represents everything Route 66, in addition to Seligman, in addition to Williams and Winslow, and every town that you go through, you are going to find a diner. Mr. D's is probably one of my favorites. Mary enjoys. I think you had the
Didn't
strawberry.
they have the homemade root beer?
There you go.
Recipe.
You are correct. The
That's
root
what I
beer.
remember, yeah.
So that they spent years trying to find this recipe for root beer. They nailed it down based on family and customer reviews, I want to say 30, 40 years ago. And it's been the same. So you walk in, you can have a root beer float, you can have a root beer, and it's handmade right there on the premises. So, yeah, very good. That was, again, I knew you liked that. And it's right across from the Locomotive Park, which is right across the street from the Visitor Center in Kingman. And that's where you're going to find one of the, I believe they call it an automobile shield, where you can go in and drive into the shield and get a photo, and it says Route 66 in the city of Kingman. But a lot of people don't realize the history along Route 66. They own the honor of having the, I want to say first, if not only, but the first electronic vehicle, which is EV museum. So, believe it or not, EVs have been around a very long time, and you can go and see. Plus, it has one of the giant quick charging stations as well. Now, I understand that museum is going to be moving. It's gotten so big, they're going to move into another building. But again, showing the history of Route 66 and the future of Route 66. One thing I learned not too long ago, and I had him on one of our podcasts and one of our first video casts, was D3 Distillery in Kingman. It's on the road to the airport of Kingman. So we have a distillery, we have, what do they call, craft beers, and there's so much to find along routes. The Grand Canyon Brewery Company, there's one in Williams as well. So there's so much. That that is a gift. Let me make sure that I push all the right buttons here. Mary's holding up, what is it?
Yeah, these were a gift, and you're going to have to remind me who gave them to us. This
The owners.
black cherry balsamic vinegar and thyme herb olive oil.
Yeah.
And these were a gift from that same distillery, weren't they?
They were indeed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Haven't enjoyed them yet. Because the bottles are too cool, so I have them almost as decoration. But those were a lovely gift.
I love the fact that again they were so happy to share with me the history of the distillery, and they have these, and they're bottled right on the premises. The balsamic vinegars and the oils, and I mean they have a full bar where you would think they have wine bottles. Nope, it's full of that.
Oh, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Olive oil tastings and
Absolutely.
that's definitely a thing.
So not only do you have the nostalgia of we showed the picture of the Roadkill Cafe in Seligman, Mr. D's, which you're going to find in Kingman, but there's also Delgadillo's Snowcap Drive-In, which is the big one. Literally, Mary had mentioned it when we were in Seligman one of the last times. The amount of buses that pull up. I mean, there must have been 3 or 4 full buses that pulled up to Snowcap because this is a destination. People want to go in. It's part of Angel's family, and it has been from the beginning. So if you're going to find your way, which leads me to the next one, and that's the fact that on our new calendar, which you can visit right now, and for those that like specific URLs, it's simply calendar.arizonapodcast.com. You're going to find a segment on diners, and you're going to find a segment on hotels. Motels. And there's a big difference. Everybody says, what's the difference between a hotel and a motel? One leads you into a parking lot. The other door will lead you in a hallway.
Yeah.
So there,
Hotels have hallways.
Hallways for a hotel, M for motor, and there you have it. One of the greatest, we've made our picks. Believe it or not, you can go onto the website and you'll see it says a Route 66 favorite of ours. And that's Earl's Motor Court in Winslow, Arizona. If you want to experience a Route 66 stay in an awesome hotel, go make your reservation now and make that the destination of your road trip. The antique neon signs in the parking lot leading you to the motel. The rooms have been, and keep in mind, there are some motels on Route 66 where the only luxuries that you'll find is heating and air and a TV. There are other ones that have added home touches. Again, I'll brag about Earl's. They have handmade quilts that are on the bed. They welcome you with open arms to give you that experience. A lot of the motels, like you'll find in Holbrook, like the TP, the Wigwam Motel, some have microwaves, small refrigerators. Some even have Wi-Fi. So you have to find the one that fits you the best. But if you want to fit into that whole motel thing, and we have 5 or 6, a half a dozen or so, motels that we've listed, and the diners as well for something. Recently, again, the eye rolls in the back of the truck. My grandson Eden and his girlfriend Katie came out from San Diego, and Mary and I gave them the tour of Route 66, at least from Kingman to Williams, and then took them to the Grand Canyon. Neither one had, and I found out that kind of interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, sweetie. Was it Eden's girlfriend had never been out of the state of California?
Correct. Yeah, that was her first trip too. Well, no, that's not true because she'd been down to Mexico, but that was her first trip out of state to another state, and we kept telling her, because we're in Fort Mojave, but we kept telling her that it's a 3-4 hour drive to go see a hole in the ground. We just kind of kept teasing them about that, but even for two 20-year-olds, once they got there, it stopped being just a hole in the ground, and they both admitted it was really pretty amazing to stand at the edge of the canyon, even on the south rim. Never been up to the north rim, but I've heard that that's even more spectacular.
I understand, yeah, and the road getting to the Grand Canyon, that's an adventure in itself too. What is that? You can pass by Flintstone Village and all that other craziness where you can actually see the Flintstones, but Eden and Katie were very good guests for us. Even though if I remember correctly on that trip, there was an accident on the road between the gate at Grand Canyon to the Grand Canyon. We sat for probably a good hour not moving at all, and they were really good sports.
To add to that car trip.
But let me tell you something, if you've never been to the Grand Canyon, go, because you can see it in their faces. They stood at you come through that parking lot, you make it through the visitor center, and you come out to the rim. It's a sight to see. Pictures and movies do it absolutely no justice. It is vast. And my grandson, who hates heights, actually took a photo standing on the edge of the canyon. It was kind of interesting. So
my favorite time at the Grand Canyon was when we took our bikes.
Oh, yeah. Again, another road trip that I completely forgot about. I'm a height guy. I don't like heights at all. And we went out. We'd stayed in Laughlin. This was years ago as we were visitors to the state of Arizona. And we went out to the Grand Canyon, and we both had not seen it since kids. So it was kind of fun to go back out. And then Mary said, hey, we should bring our bikes out. And we did it. It was probably a year later. We came out and rode our bikes right on the edge of the rim.
Makes for some very cool photographs.
It did. Just photographs in general. So we've talked about Oatman. We've talked about standing on the corner. We've pretty well talked about everything that I wanted to talk about and you wanted to talk about. The only thing that's left is making sure that we introduce what we're going to talk about next, and that is our deep dive. And one of the things I wanted to share with you, and just so you understand what we have become, it's Arizona Route 66, the podcast, and Arizona Route 66, the calendar. So we will focus our podcast now just on that stretch of Route 66. And which is kind of cool. I don't mind. Keep in mind, it's 385.2 miles from border to border. It is one of the most fun-filled legs of Route 66. Not to say that there's nothing fun to see in New Mexico, Oklahoma, Missouri, all that. I mean, there's the Arch in St. Louis. St. Louis. You can Carlsbad Caverns, Halfway Point. I mean, Tucumcari, New Mexico. There's so much to see and do on the route. And again, we just had Scott Piotrowski, who is the president of the historic Route 66 Society Association in California, all the things to see and do in Los Angeles. And one of the things that I learned is I've never, other than the time living in the San Diego area, have never been but a stone's throw away from Route 66 since we got here. When we lived in when the family lived in Arcadia, California, right down the street from Route 66, Rialto, San Bernardino, Bloomington, California, right on Route 66. San Bernardino up on Kendall, Route 66. So I've always been close. So this is kind of predestined for me, and I am so excited. I've got some real experts that'll be on the show as well to share part of that. This again leading up to, excuse me, if anything, it's leading to the centennial, which I believe will be millions of people over that 1 year stretch. Two other things, if I remember right. It's the anniversary of Cars, and if there, again, a little piece of history. Cars, inspired by Angel Delgadillo in Seligman, Cool Springs, which became Radiator
Clarify
Springs.
when you say Cars. You mean the animated movie Cars?
The movie Cars, yes. So that was inspired by Seligman and Angel and the town coming back to life. So I believe it's celebrating, is that 20 or 30 year anniversary, 25 anniversary, anyway, of the Pixar movie Cars. What was it? Lightning McQueen. Who could forget that? And then in 2026 is also the 250th anniversary of the United States. So we've got a huge birthday. And I mean, think about it. How more iconic can it be to celebrate America?
That's Americana.
Right there.
Right
So
there.
when we call it the Main Street of America, it makes perfect sense. Again, we're going to make our way into the deep dive, talking about Google coming in and with their voices sharing with you what they found not only on ArizonaPodcast.com, but also our calendar. We'll dive into that. But I invite you to go by the calendar. I invite you to go by the website. Things are going to change around here. And keep in mind, what do you want to call? What would you call this? Kind of a skeleton idea of the calendar. It's fully packed right now. You could go and see what's available, but there's more coming. I promise. We'll dive into all the cities along Route 66 in Arizona.
And such a great resource because, like you said, everything else is kind of hodgepodge. You got to pick and choose and know what location you're looking for before you can find it. So this is hopefully going to kind of consolidate all that and condense it a little bit like a Reader's Digest version of what you can find on.
Yeah, and not only here, I wanted to put on. If I don't know if I have a picture of the calendar. Let me You would have thought that I would have thought this through a little bit better, but it's understanding that's on this calendar. We've broken it down not only to like an events calendar that you'll find anywhere, but we've broken it down into festivals, parades, rodeos, car shows, runs and walks, and holiday events, and of course, oddities. And those are broken down in calendar form. So when you're on the road, go look at that week that you'll be on Route 66, and you get to see that as well. Then we've broken it down to tours, ghost towns. So we have walking tours, ghost towns, the must-sees that you have to do, and that's the big events. I mean, Meteor Crater, Grand Canyon, and the like. The Route 66 Odysseys. We also have a page of the complete history of Route 66, and then we have just kind of a sneak peek at some of the events that have already been scheduled for the centennial in 2026. This nostalgia stuff that we have, the motels and the diners, and not to leave anybody out, we wanted to be the home that you could turn to on this calendar to get to a specific city. So you'll find it broken down into calendar of events per the city. I believe Kingman has 3 different resources of calendars, and Seligman. What do we have here? Winslow, Flagstaff, Williams, Seligman, Kingman, Oatman, and Holbrook. So we welcome them and we share that with our visitors. Go see their sites. But now you don't have to go to Google or Yahoo or Bing or any of those. We've kind of centralized everything, and then watch us grow.
And to point you at their resources, at their calendars, that's kind of a nice little, just a clearinghouse, like you said before.
And I noticed that the National Route 66 Centennial was looking for resources for every state, and I noticed they don't have Arizona listed. I mean, if you click on the button, there's just nothing there, but you could go to Oklahoma, and there's a couple of resources. I hope that they'll invite us onto their listing of events, so that or at least take the events that we have and share. Now, again, keep in mind the calendar are for the big boys, and we didn't want to leave the small bazaars and fundraising events and things like that out of the running. That's why we included the city websites, where you'll find that as well. So if you'll be coming into Arizona, let's say you're going to come into Kingman and stay for 3 or 4 days into Kingman, click on that events calendar that they have. They have a more detailed events that you'll find going on every day, and they too have the breakdowns of distilleries and craft beers and everything that you want to find. We, again, thank you so very much for joining us. We're going to push a couple of buttons. We're going to mute ourselves. We're going to put down the screen, give it a couple of seconds, and I will welcome you into what is called the deep dive. And the deep dive is very important that you just kind of listen and hear what Google had to say by joining. Mary, thank you for joining me. I hope you'll do this more often now.
Absolutely.
She's never afraid of it much. No. I'm the guy that screams when he sees a scorpion. I scream like a woman. She's a little tougher than I am, tougher than the rest, which is great. Thank you again for joining us for the Arizona podcast as we premiered Arizona Route 66, the podcast, Arizona Route 66, the calendar. Again, thank you so much for joining us. If I push all the right buttons, everything's going to work. Give it a couple of seconds, and we'll see you next time on Arizona Podcast.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're hitting the road.
Oh, fun.
Well, virtually, of course. To explore Arizona's stretch of Route 66. You've given us some great articles and websites about this legendary highway. It's going to be quite the journey.
It certainly is. What's fascinating to me is how Route 66 has transcended its role as a simple road. It's become a cultural touchstone, almost a mythical symbol of America itself.
Exactly. It's not just asphalt and road signs. It's a pathway through history, filled with stories of adventure, hardship, and the pursuit of dreams. And to guide us on this particular deep dive, we have some interesting sources featuring the voices of Chris and Mary Tuttle. They're the duo behind the Arizona Route 66 podcast.
They seem like quite the dynamic duo, Chris, with his extensive background in broadcasting, and Mary with her entrepreneurial spirit. They've really carved out a unique niche, sharing their passion for this iconic highway.
And their mission really resonates with me. It's all about encouraging people, both residents and visitors, to get out there and explore Arizona, to discover those hidden gems and experience the magic of Route 66 firsthand.
And they do it with such a positive and welcoming attitude. There's a real sense of respect and gratitude for the people and places that make Route 66 so special.
Okay, let's unpack Chris a bit more. 30 years in broadcasting, former VP and GM in Southern California radio. That's quite a resume. And now he's a semi-retired chaplain, still officiating weddings. It sounds like he's always been drawn to connecting with people and sharing stories.
That's a great observation. And it seems that passion has now found a new outlet in the Arizona Route 66 podcast. He brings a wealth of experience to the table, not just in terms of broadcasting, but also in terms of understanding the power of storytelling and its ability to connect people to a place.
And then there's Mary, a real go-getter, franchise and small business owner, dance instructor, wedding celebrant. And a self-proclaimed Mimi to her grandchildren. You can tell she brings a lot of energy and heart to everything she does.
Absolutely. And from what I gather, she's the one who really got Chris hooked on exploring Arizona's backroads. It seems their shared love for adventure is what fuels their podcast and inspires them to keep uncovering those hidden treasures along Route 66.
I love that. It's like a real-life buddy comedy. Except instead of laughs, they're serving up history and roadside attractions with a side of Arizona's sunshine. Now, before we delve into their specific resources and insights, let's take a step back and talk about why Route 66 itself holds such a powerful place in the American psyche.
It really is remarkable. I think it taps into our collective nostalgia for a simpler time. You know, that classic image of the open road, the sense of freedom and possibility.
It's the embodiment of that classic American road trip, isn't it? Those images of vintage cars cruising down the highway, families piling into station wagons, roadside diners with neon signs beckoning weary travelers. It's also deeply ingrained in our cultural memory.
And let's not forget its impact on literature and music. John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath immortalized Route 66 as the Mother Road, a symbol of hope and resilience during the Dust Bowl era. And then there's Bobby Troupe's iconic song, Get Your Kicks On Route 66, which practically became the highway's anthem.
It's like the road itself is a character in these stories, a witness to history unfolding. It's seen it all. Westward expansion, the Dust Bowl migration, the rise of the automobile, the changing face of America. And that history is etched into every mile of asphalt.
Precisely. And I think that's why it continues to fascinate people today. It's a tangible link to our past, a reminder of where we've come from and the journeys that have shaped us as a nation.
And speaking of journeys, this deep dive is going to be quite the adventure. So buckle up, grab your virtual road map, and get ready to explore the heart of America, one stretch of Arizona Route 66 at a time. Where should we head first?
Wow. Considering Chris and Mary's passion for uncovering those hidden gems, I think we should start by exploring some of the more unusual, lesser-known aspects of Arizona's Route 66. They've even coined a term for them, Route 66 oddities. Shall we take a detour into the world of the weird and wonderful?
Let's do it. I'm all for embracing the quirky side of Route 66. After all, it's those unexpected discoveries that often make the best travel stories.
Exactly. So let's get off the beaten path and delve into some of the stranger attractions that make Arizona's Route 66 truly unique. Are you ready for some roadside surprises?
Bring it on. I'm ready to be amazed and maybe even a little bewildered. It's all part of the Route 66 experience. Tell me, what kind of oddities are we talking about here?
Well, one of the things that struck me about Chris and Mary's approach is that they don't shy away from the unusual. In fact, they seem to revel in it. They've curated this collection of Route 66 oddities. That includes everything from larger-than-life statues and bizarre museums to roadside attractions that defy explanation.
You've got me intrigued. What kind of bizarre museums are we talking about?
Oh, you know, the kind that make you scratch your head and wonder, how did this place even come to be? For example, they mention a museum dedicated to petrified wood carvings. Not just any carvings, mind you, but carvings that depict scenes from classic Route 66 movies and TV shows.
That's incredible. It's like two worlds colliding. The ancient history of petrified wood and the pop culture legacy of Route 66. It sounds like the perfect blend of quirky and fascinating.
Exactly, and that's just one example. They also mention a museum dedicated to vintage gas punks, a place where you can trace the evolution of this ubiquitous roadside icon.
I love it. It's like a celebration of the mundane, a reminder that even the most ordinary objects have a history, a story to tell.
And what about those larger-than-life statues you mentioned? I have a feeling those are right up my alley.
Oh, they're definitely a sight to behold. Imagine a towering 20-foot-tall jackrabbit welcoming you to a trading post, or a giant fiberglass dinosaur looming over a roadside diner. Now, that's what I call roadside Americana. It's those over-the-top, larger-than-life attractions that really capture the spirit of Route 66. They're a testament to the creativity and entrepreneurial spirit of the people who built this highway, and those who continue to keep its legacy alive.
And speaking of entrepreneurial spirit, Chris and Mary have taken their passion for Route 66 and turned it into a valuable resource for others. They've created a comprehensive online calendar highlighting all sorts of events happening along Arizona's stretch of Route 66.
Now, that sounds incredibly useful. I can imagine it being a lifesaver for anyone planning a Route 66 road trip, especially with the centennial celebration coming up in 2026.
It's a real treasure trove of information. They've organized it by event type, so you can easily find everything from classic car shows and music festivals to historical reenactments and ghost town tours.
Wow, so there's something for everyone. I'm already starting to feel that Route 66 wanderlust kicking in. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, Let's take a closer look at some of those specific events that really capture the spirit of this legendary highway. What are some of the highlights?
Well, one event that immediately caught my eye is the annual Route 66 Fun Run. It's a multi-day event where classic car enthusiasts from all over the country gather to cruise down Arizona's Route 66, showcasing their vintage vehicles and celebrating the golden age of the automobile.
That sounds amazing. I can practically hear the rumble of those classic engines and smell the exhaust fumes in a good way, of course. It must be quite a sight to see those vintage cars rolling down the highway.
It truly is. It's like stepping back in time, a chance to witness a piece of automotive history come to life. And the event isn't just about the cars, it's also about the people, the camaraderie, the shared passion for preserving this iconic piece of Americana.
I love that. It's that sense of community that really makes Route 66 special. It's more than just a road. It's a network of people, towns, and experiences all connected by the shared history. What other events caught your eye?
Well, for those interested in the more spooky side of Route 66, there's an annual ghost town tour that explores some of the abandoned towns and settlements along the route. It's a chance to learn about the boom and bust cycles that shape these communities, and imagine what life was like for those who called these places home.
Ooh, that sounds both fascinating and a little eerie.
Hmm.
I'm always intrigued by those ghost towns, those echoes of the past that linger in the landscape. It must be quite a feeling to walk through those deserted streets and imagine the hustle and bustle that once filled them.
It's definitely a unique experience. It's a reminder that history isn't just about dates and events. It's about the lives of real people, the hopes and dreams that shaped these communities. And speaking of history, one event that seems particularly relevant with the centennial approaching is a series of historical reenactments that bring to life key moments from Route 66's past.
Oh, tell me more about those. I'm a sucker for historical reenactments. It's like stepping into a time machine and witnessing history unfold firsthand.
One reenactment that Chris and Mary highlighted focuses on the Dust Bowl migration, a pivotal moment in Route 66's history. They'll be recreating scenes from that era, showcasing the challenges faced by those fleeing the Dust Bowl and the role Route 66 played in their journey westward.
Wow, that sounds incredibly powerful. It's so important to remember those stories, to understand the hardships and resilience of those who came before us. It adds a whole new dimension to the experience of driving down Route 66.
Absolutely. And speaking of driving down Route 66, we can't forget about the iconic landmarks and natural wonders that make Arizona's stretch of this highway so visually stunning. From the majestic Grand Canyon to the otherworldly landscapes of the Painted Desert and Petrified Forest, Arizona's Route 66 offers a feast for the eyes.
You're absolutely right. Those natural wonders are an integral part of the Route 66 experience. They're the backdrop against which these stories unfold, adding a sense of grandeur and awe to the journey.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the quirkier landmarks, like the Standing on the Corner Park in Winslow, Arizona, a tribute to the Eagles' hit song, Take It Easy. It's a fun stop where you can literally stand on the corner immortalized in the song and snap a photo with a statue of a guitarist.
That's classic Route 66 right there.
Yeah.
It's that perfect blend of music, nostalgia, and roadside kitsch. I can't imagine a Route 66 trip without a stop at that corner. But speaking of stops, I think we've covered quite a bit of ground in this first leg of our deep dive.
Well, we certainly have. We've delved into the world of Route 66 oddities, explored some of the exciting events happening along Arizona's stretch of the highway, and even touched upon the iconic landmarks that make this journey so visually spectacular. But there's still so much more to discover.
There is, and I'm eager to hear more. But for now, we'll have to leave our listeners with a bit of a cliffhanger. Stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into the heart of Arizona Route 66.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Arizona's Route 66. Before we took a break, we were talking about all those incredible landmarks and natural wonders that dot the landscape along this historic highway. It's really quite something, isn't it?
It is. I mean, we've got the Grand Canyon, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, practically begging for a detour. And then you've got those otherworldly landscapes like the Painted Desert and the Petrified Forest, each with its own unique beauty and history.
It's as if nature itself decided to put on a show along this stretch of highway. And to think that people have been traveling this route for centuries, witnessing these same awe-inspiring sights.
Exactly. And each generation adds its own layer of stories to the tapestry of Route 66. From the indigenous peoples who first inhabited these lands to the pioneers who forged their way westward. From the Dust Bowl migrants seeking a better life to the families embarking on cross-country road trips, they've all left their mark on this iconic highway.
And speaking of leaving their mark, Hollywood has certainly had its fair share of influence on Route 66. Countless movies and TV shows have used this highway as a backdrop, capturing its essence of adventure, freedom, and the American spirit.
Oh, absolutely. It's like Route 66 has become a character in itself, a symbol of the American dream and the open road. What are some of the films that have really captured that Route 66 magic?
One that immediately comes to mind is The Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck's classic novel adapted for the screen. It depicts the harrowing journey of a family fleeing the Dust Bowl during the Great Depression, heading west along Route 66 in search of a better life.
That's a powerful film, both heartbreaking and inspiring. It really captures the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity, and it showcases the role Route 66 played as a lifeline for so many during those difficult times.
Exactly. And then you have films like Easy Rider, which captures the counterculture movement of the 1960s. With Route 66 serving as a symbol of rebellion and the search for personal liberation, it's a visually stunning film, showcasing the vast landscapes of the American West, including some iconic shots along Arizona's stretch of Route 66.
I love how these films, even though they were made decades apart, both capture that sense of Route 66 as a symbol of change, a road that leads to something new, something different.
And it's not just those classic films. Even more contemporary movies like Cars have drawn inspiration from Route 66, using it as a setting for their animated adventures. It's a testament to the enduring appeal of this highway, its ability to capture the imagination of people across generations.
Speaking of capturing the imagination, I remember reading about a film called Starman that was partly filmed in Winslow, Arizona. It's a quirky sci-fi romance about an alien who takes on human form and embarks on a road trip along Route 66.
That's right. And it seems that Winslow has embraced its Hollywood connection, adding another layer of pop culture lore to this already iconic spot.
I love it. It's those little touches that make Route 66 so special. Those unexpected surprises that make you smile and appreciate the quirky side of this highway.
And speaking of quirky, we haven't even touched upon those Route 66 oddities that we started discussing earlier, those roadside attractions that defy explanation, those larger-than-life statues, those bizarre museums. They're all part of the Route 66 experience.
You're right. We need to circle back to those. They're a reminder that Route 66 isn't just about history and nostalgia. It's also about embracing the weird and wonderful, celebrating the creativity and entrepreneurial spirit of those who've made this highway their own.
Absolutely. And perhaps we should take a detour into the world of those oddities right now. Are you ready for some roadside surprises?
Always. Lead the way.
Yeah.
What kind of strange and wonderful sights await us?
Well, one of the things that fascinated me about the Route 66 oddities that Chris and Mary highlighted is that they're often a reflection of the local landscape and history. For instance, they mentioned a place called Two Guns, an abandoned trading post and tourist attraction that sits atop a mesa overlooking a canyon.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing. What's the story behind that place?
Well, it has quite a colorful past. It was originally inhabited by indigenous peoples, then became a stagecoach stop, and later a trading post and tourist attraction catering to Route 66 travelers. But it's also been the site of several tragedies, including a shootout between rival gangs in the late 1800s.
Wow. So it's a place steeped in both history and legend. It sounds like the perfect setting for a ghost story.
It certainly does. And speaking of ghosts, Chris and Mary also mentioned a place called the Oatman Hotel in the town of Oatman, Arizona, which is said to be haunted by the ghosts of miners and other figures from the town's past.
Now that's my kind of roadside attraction. I love a good ghost story.
Huh?
And there's something about those old Route 66 towns that just seem to invite tales of the supernatural.
They definitely have an air of mystery about them. And the Oatman Hotel, with its creaky floorboards and tales of ghostly apparitions, fits right into that narrative.
And speaking of fitting into a narrative, I remember reading about another Route 66 oddity that caught my attention. The Wigwam Motel in Holbrook, Arizona. It's a motel where the rooms are shaped like giant teepees, a nod to the indigenous cultures of the region.
Ah, yes, the Wigwam Motel. It's a classic example of that mid-century roadside architecture with its kitschy charm and larger-than-life designs. It's a reminder of a time when road trips were all about embracing the novelty and whimsy of the open road.
It's like stepping back in time, isn't it? I can just imagine families pulling up in their station wagons, kids excitedly piling out to explore those teepee-shaped rooms. It's a piece of Americana that's both nostalgic and endearing.
Absolutely. And speaking of nostalgia, We haven't even touched upon the culinary delights that await travelers along Arizona's Route 66. From classic diners serving up juicy burgers and creamy milkshakes to roadside stands offering local delicacies, like prickly pear ice cream and Navajo tacos, there's something to satisfy every craving.
Oh, now you're talking. Food is such an integral part of the road trip experience, and Route 66 is no exception. Those classic diners with their chrome counters and checkered floors just scream Americana.
They do, and the food is often as comforting and familiar as the surroundings. It's like stepping back in time to a simpler era, when a good burger and a milkshake were all you needed to fuel your journey.
And speaking of fueling your journey,
I think
we've covered a lot of ground in this leg of our deep dive. We've explored those Route 66 oddities, delved into the world of Hollywood and its connection to this iconic highway, and even teased our taste buds with a glimpse of the culinary delights that await travelers. But there's still so much more to discover.
there is, and I'm eager to continue our exploration. But for now, we'll have to leave our listeners with another cliffhanger. Stay tuned as we embark on the final leg of our deep dive into the heart of Arizona, Route 66.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring the history, the landmarks, and even the oddities that make Arizona's Route 66 so unique.
It's been a fascinating ride, hasn't it? And through all of this, the thread that keeps weaving through is the human element. The people who built this road, the travelers who've journeyed along it, and those like Chris and Mary Tuttle who are dedicated to preserving its legacy.
You're right. And speaking of Chris and Mary, we haven't even delved into the incredible resource they've created. For anyone planning to experience Arizona Route 66 firsthand.
Ah, yes, their online calendar of events. It's a real gem, packed with information about everything happening along the route, from classic car shows to historical reenactments.
It's like they've taken all their passion and knowledge and poured it into this interactive guide. What stood out to you the most?
Well, I was particularly impressed by how well-organized and user-friendly it is. They've categorized the events by type, so you can easily find exactly what you're looking for.
And with the Centennial celebration just around the corner in 2026, I bet that calendar is going to be overflowing with even more exciting events.
You bet. They've already started adding Centennial-specific events, giving folks a chance to plan ahead for this once-in-a-lifetime celebration. It's clear they're dedicated to making this anniversary a truly memorable one.
I love that they're thinking ahead. It's a testament to their commitment to keeping the spirit of Route 66 alive and kicking. Speaking of which, they've also included a section for those classic Route 66 motels and diners.
Of course. No Route 66 experience would be complete without a stay at one of those iconic motels with their neon signs and vintage vibes, or a meal at a diner where you can practically taste the nostalgia in the air.
It's like stepping back in time, isn't it? You can almost picture those weary travelers pulling up in their classic cars, eager for a good meal and a comfortable bed after a long day on the road.
It's a reminder that Route 66 isn't just about the destination. It's about the journey itself. It's about slowing down, savoring the scenery, and connecting with the people and places along the way.
And with Chris and Mary's calendar as your guide, you can plan a trip that hits all the highlights. From the quirky roadside attractions to the must-see natural wonders.
They've even included links to local city event calendars, ensuring that you won't miss out on any of the local festivities happening during your trip. They've really thought of everything.
It's incredible. And it makes me think about what we've uncovered in this deep dive. It's clear that Arizona Route 66 is so much more than just road. It's a living, breathing testament to American history, culture, and the enduring allure of the open road.
It's a place where the past and present intersect, where nostalgia and adventure collide, and where the spirit of possibility is still alive and well.
And thanks to passionate individuals like Chris and Mary Tuttle, that spirit is being preserved and shared with new generations of travelers. They've given us a roadmap, not just to Arizona Route 66, but to a deeper understanding of what makes this highway so special.
So to our listener, what will you take away from this deep dive? Are you picturing yourself cruising down this iconic highway, wind in your hair, stopping at those quirky roadside attractions and soaking in the unique atmosphere? Perhaps you're even inspired to create your own Arizona Route 66 adventure with Chris and Mary's resources as your guide.
And here's something to ponder as you embark on your own Route 66 journey. What stories will you add to the legacy of this iconic highway? What memories will you create?
Safe travels. And remember, get your kicks on Route 66.
Thank you for listening to Arizona Route 66, the podcast. For more information about our podcasts, the people, places, and events, or the sponsors heard, visit ArizonaPodcast.com. Available for download everywhere.